All right, hold on. Let me put my headphones on. All right. Let me know if you can hear me. Let me see here. Oh, thanks, Sandra. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy that the Wi-Fi situation is good. Is it coming in clear? Is it looking choppy? Let me know what it looks like on your end. So far, it looks like it's working. But in case of anything, please let me know. The Wi-Fi strength right now is at full. Breezy, yes. I am currently on a balcony. Let me see here. I'm gonna try to do a little. So we're in this villa that's close to the beach. Let me see if the glare, there we go. So this is currently, there is a main road just down the way, so you can hear some of those vehicles. Yeah, like that truck there. Let me see here. Okay, making sure I got everything up and going. But how have all of you been? Let me know. Feel free to hop on. Just making sure I put together some photos of some things I've seen here so far. We just got here yesterday morning, so my phone literally died because I was trying to take videos and photos, and we had to do a lot of driving from the airport to get here, and everything was coming out blurry. And so every time we would stop, I would try to grab things, and the whole car ride, I was like, Big, oh my God, Croton, dragon fruit, as we were driving. So I've been seeing so many cool plants that I was completely losing my mind about. And I did manage to take pictures of a few of them so far. And so I will be sharing those with you. Hi, Synth. Hello, hello. Indiana from
Yes.
Orlando, Florida. Hello,
Yeah.
hello.
Hello. Good to be here. It's exciting.
Good to have you. I was like, oh, it's my first on location class.
It's like a field trip for us.
Yes. Oh, yes. And so the plan is, let's see how this works, because it's going to be a complete experiment. So I'm going to share a couple photos, take some questions, and then what the plan is, I'm going to join the meeting with my phone. And then I'm going to see if I can take you on a tour of the garden here and show you some cool plants.
That's great.
So we'll see. We'll see how that works.
Okay. What time is it there?
What time is it?
Yeah.
So it's 2 hours behind. So it's
behind. Okay.
29. Yeah. Over here. Yes, Paulette. Yes, you're all on vacation with me.
That's nice.
See here. Adeline, hello. It's super hot. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The weather definitely just makes folks not even want to go out to work on the garden. Absolutely not. Yeah, it's been really hot. In New York, when we left, we saw that this week was going to be low 80s, which is a break because it's been like in the 90s in the city. And then here it's pretty warm. It's more the humidity than anything. There's a nice cool breeze, but so far we're not boiling, which we prefer. See. Oh, awesome. All right, I'm gonna get started. All right. The neighbor has a guard dog, beautiful black lab, but that's who's chiming in right now. Oh, heavy rains in New Jersey. Jeez. Yeah, I've been seeing there's droughts in so many areas that folks, there are things that are coming up, like in Lake Mead, with the whole about they're finding bodies, they're finding boats and cars. in China, I believe. There was an area that also has been hit really hard by drought, and they found like different like artifacts, like a temple. I think in Spain as well, yet another. So it's weird, but with the droughts, a bunch of artifacts are starting to turn up. Let me see. In Ottawa, 75. Yeah, feels like 82. Oof. All right. So let me share my screen. There we go. All right. This should work. Ta-da! Okay. Let me put there we go. Awesome, awesome. So yes, as always, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're tuning in from. And there we go. So this is part of the Urban Garden Learning Series. Thank you so much for tuning in, where we offer different types of classes, Q&As, plant clinics, just open forums, just hangouts, come ask your questions, share whatever you like. You can have the platform basically to share with us any fun topics, tips, anything that you're interested in. Definitely let me know if there's ever any time that you want to present. Maybe you want to do a small 10-minute presentation. Maybe you want to take the whole time. You're more than welcome to. Let me know and we'll organize it. So right now, let me see. Here we go. I am in El Salvador. And there we go. Yes, the animation is working. I am here. That's where I'm located right now. And the reason that we're actually visiting El Salvador is because my husband's family is from El Salvador. So we're here visiting. I'm getting to meet his grandparents, his aunts and uncles, because I only knew his siblings and his parents because they're the only ones in the States. So it's been pretty fun getting to know everyone and connecting. So it's been awesome. I'm very happy we were able to get here. And as you can see, I'm not sure if this graphic will work, but there it is. This was a cool shot that someone got on a drone. So I was like, I need to share it with you guys. This area is full of mountains, tropical rainforests. Right now we're along the coast, but there's still a lot of green. It's a lot of green. Thankfully, and I'm gonna probably jinx myself. As of yet, I have not been bit by any insects, any mosquitoes, but I think it's just a matter of time. So I'll probably come back completely covered. I did want to share with you that some really cool things. So for El Salvador, for instance, their national animal is the turquoise colored or turquoise banded motte. It's a motte, and it's this beautiful bird here. And I think I'm getting the turquoise banded. I think it's turquoise banded motte. And here they call it the torogos. And absolutely beautiful bird. It's currently endangered. So that's the national animal here. And the national flower is actually the yucca. The flor de isote is called here. And this is the spineless yucca, which a lot of folks might recognize as a common landscape plant. And so absolutely gorgeous flowers. I have a few neighbors that actually have yucca out in New York City, and it flowers absolutely beautiful. I was not aware that the flowers are actually edible, and here they're added to a lot of traditional dishes. Super, super cool plant. And these are huge towers of flowers. I always love finding them. They're so awesome. And it's cool to know, hey, I recognize that plant, their national plant. Here are some photos that I've shared so far with this was one I got from the car, which actually worked. Didn't come out too blurry. And then I spotted this guy, huge, but it turns out that this is only the juvenile stage, so the nymph stage of the largest grasshopper in Central America. And it's called the red-winged grasshopper. And so as a young juvenile, it has this really funny yellow, black and white striping, and it has this cool harlequin thing going. But when it pupates and then it switches to its adult form, it turns into this huge grasshopper with really large wings, really beautiful grasshopper. And no idea, I just saw it. I saw it on a wall and I had to take a closer look. It's really beautiful. Here, I was trying to take the video and this poor thing was running around in circles. There's a bunch of leafcutter ants here, so it's pretty awesome to see. I'd only seen them either at the Bronx Zoo, that they have a huge enclosure for their leafcutter ants. And of course, I've only seen them like in video and photos. So it was awesome to actually see them in person. And here are a couple of the plants that I was losing my mind for. I wish I could bring plants back, but you can't internationally without a bunch of like paperwork and stuff like that. Not happening on this trip, but there was a bunch of dragon fruit. Here you can see this is just completely lost its mind. There's some fruit actually developing on the tips of the cacti. You can see on these kind of arms, you can see some of the starts of the fruit. Absolutely beautiful. So that one was something that I had to stop and take a picture of because it was huge. It was absolutely huge. And then the kalanchoes, there were a bunch here. There's a bunch on the grounds. And this was just, I definitely wanted to take a close up so you could see how they propagate themselves. Of course, you can propagate them from, if you cut a stem, you can totally do that as well. But what they actually tend to do is make these little babies along the edges of their leaves. And then you can see with one, it started to get those little roots. And then what happens is it falls to the ground and kind of gets established and grows into a fully other plant. This one is the kalanchoe. It's like a red Rinco variegata. It's spelled very oddly. I'll see if I can I'll get the spelling. I'll put it up in the group. But it's like a F-E, it's like Fred and then TCHENKOI, something like that. But it's really beautiful. And it gets up to 2 feet tall. And these are pretty large, the ones that I was seeing. And nope. I think I clicked. There we go. There we go. There. And there. Okay, awesome. So those were the photos so far that weren't crazy blurry. I will be here for another week. We'll be getting back to the States on Sunday, so I'll be tuning in next week from home, but I will be taking many more photos to share with you. Definitely want to do some Q&A, and then, yeah, I can see if I'll try to connect my phone. That's the experiment, is I'm gonna connect my phone to the Zoom and then see if I can take a tour of the grounds and just show you some of the plants that they have here. A lot of ornamental species, but really beautiful. Okay, stop here. Okay. Let me see. I'm just going to. Why am I not? I'm not hearing. I'm trying to test my headphones, but it seems like the sound isn't coming in and I don't know why. All right. So let me. There you go. Okay. Great. Oh, so Sin says in California, it's pronounced a yucca. Yes, yucca, and yeah, here juca. Yeah, the juca. Let me see here. Yucca. Let's see. All right, perfect. So feel free to put any questions in the chat, anything like that. If you want to unmute yourself, completely feel free. I'm gonna take a second, try to see if I can reconnect my headphones so I'll hear you inside my headphones. It was working before I started and then it decided it didn't want to anymore. But I can still hear you. It's just gonna come from my laptop. Okay. Oh, thank you, Holly. So far, I'm not sunburned. So far. Let's see here. Let's see. But yes, please ask any questions at all. Feel free to use the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself. In the meantime, of course, my Amorphophallus started blooming right before I left, which I suspected. So it started putting its lily out, and it looked like it was probably going to really be in full bloom while we're here, unfortunately. So my sister-in-law is currently in our apartment, and she is taking care of the plants, taking care of the animals. So I asked her to please send me any updated photos if it changes at all. But of course, that would happen when we're leaving. When we're leaving. Barbara, hi. Can cuttings of a Monstera split-leaf philodendron, the stem of the leaf, be rooted? Good question. Okay. With the Monstera deliciosa, so that's the scientific name. Now, if you were to do a cutting with no node, so there is no node attached at the base of that leaf, then it won't actually successfully root for you. Now, sometimes if there's a little bit of node tissue of some of those activated cells, you might get some roots, but then you're just going to have a leaf. I have seen that happen where when the node is cut incorrectly and there's just a little piece of node, that some folks will get some roots that will actually generate. Those are typically called wound roots. Those tend to be the first type of roots that cuttings will produce. But it's not something that's then going to shoot out growth. So it's not going to shoot out more leaves, and it probably will be a little bit more short-lived in comparison. But then if you actually have a node, that's where it's going to grow. It's going to shoot out more leaves. It's going to not only root, but actually grow into an entirely different plant.
Yes. Hi, you look beautiful. How nice. I have always, taken a piece of the plant, the big stem, but knowing now that I have some leaves to trim off anyway, because they need to be trimmed. They're going a little bit, the big leaves. I was wondering if I should try this to root the stem, but it sounds like it's not the same as what I know works to make the healthy plant from the thick stem. Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Enjoy.
Yeah, they always get to that point where they need to get chopped. They just, especially when you're starting them off, they always grow very much wide. And then you end up chopping them to keep them a little bit more like columnar, and then try to lead them up a pole. But then again, the leaves, they really want to splay out. So yeah, but they're so beautiful. And it's a good excuse to cut them back, because then I end up just adding more monsteras around the house.
Yes, my one big beautiful one, it's become 3 pots, and now those what were little pots, now they're the ones that need to be taken down now. But yeah, I love them too. But yeah, they're getting out of hand.
Yeah.
They're doing so great, but
yeah, it's that double-edged sword. It's great, it's flourishing. Holy moly, I can't handle this thing.
it's too many. It's too many.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I get that same. Right now we have 2 cuttings in our bedroom, and the leaves are just huge. And they're just in giant mason jars. So they're actually just water propagations. They're not even in soil. And they're getting so big, I'm going to have to cut them. And they're still even in water. So this isn't even like an established plant in soil. Yeah. So let's see here. Holly, yes, I don't know. I removed him. Hopefully that was enough and he won't come back. I don't know. That was odd. That was very odd.
Yes, thank you for removing him. That was rude.
Yeah. 。
Jocelyn, can I show you my violet?
？ Oh, yeah,
Violet.
。
Violet.
Oh,
'Cause
Yeah. Let me see here.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I cannot show you. I'm using a laptop right now that I can't even change my video to where you can see it. But anyway, my violets are all coupled together. It's not just one. It's one big one planter, and I don't know, about 20 of them in the planter. Can I just separate each one, or is this normal for them to grow like that?
And which species is this?
This is the violet, purple
Oh,
violet.
the violets, yeah. They do tend to, when they put out pups, sometimes you can get a leaf, for instance, that kind of fell in the pot, or they'll produce them. And sometimes they're grouped together. They're sold in like sets of 3 or 4. Usually their roots get pretty tangled up.
They're all like, they're all, they're all, I think they cannot breathe anymore, but then they keep on producing their little babies. The pot, I mean, I have a big planter. The pot is full.
Yeah.
Breathe, they don't have room to breathe or something. I don't want to kill them because it's beautiful when it flowers, but I have to pick the flowers off because I want the leaves to strengthen first before
It gets, yeah. Yeah, I think they should be fine if you keep them together. I don't think that will necessarily really hinder them. But if you do want to separate them out and give them that space to breathe, you can do so. I would just say make sure if you're going to be doing that separation that it's not bone dry. So give them a nice watering about 2 days before, at least a day before, so that those roots can be nice and hydrated. And it's going to be much easier when you're separating. You're still going to get breakage, but when they're super dehydrated, they're more likely to rip. But you can tease them out that way, and then it should be fine.
Okay, thank you, because I don't want to kill
You're
them. They're beautiful.
Like, try to. Okay. All right. I saw some questions come in the chat. Diana, do you find air plants in the area? Yes, I saw a bunch from the car. So unfortunately, I haven't found any within my grasp. But yes, I saw some really big ones, huge tillandsias. So those are air plants. Sure, yeah, I can definitely talk about them, Holly. With air plants, I love them. I have a few that are several years old. That's probably the most abundant plant that I have in my collection. I have, gosh, what, 3, 5, 3. I probably have 2 dozen in my kitchen, and then I have about 20 in the living room, and then I have another 5 in the bedroom, something like that. So those are probably the ones that I constantly buy anytime I find a good deal, especially those variety packs where it's pay $20 and get 20 different air plants. I love to do that. The thing with air plants is you have to, they fall into 2 different wheelhouses. So there are the mesic varieties, and then there's the Merrick, mesic. I think it's mesic. And then there's the Xeric. Maybe it is Merrick and Xeric. I'm going to say Merrick and Xeric. And basically with the Merrick, it's more tropical, like kind of this kind of feel where there's a lot of humidity. They want to get deeply soaked, essentially. So about every 2 weeks or so, I take my air plants. I use spring water. So I would not recommend tap water. Tap water does tend to burn them. And distilled water, it usually is recommended, but the problem is that air plants, they don't have the traditional roots, right? So what happens is that they need to get minerals just like other plants do. So by putting spring water, that is something that is going to have some minerals that are just going to help the plant along. They also really what is called dirty water, which is essentially rainwater. If you happen to collect rainwater, your air plants would very much appreciate that. But yeah, so with these Merrick varieties, what they want is you to dunk them. So I have a big, like a Rubbermaid. And so what I do is I put them all upside down, I fill it up, and I basically forget about them for about an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
And then after I come back, and this is about every 2 weeks. So I come back, I put down like a small kitchen towel and I give them all a shake. So you want to make sure you get any of that excess water within those creases, because a lot of them are bunched up like that. And so you're going to want to make sure that you get out some of that excess water, because typically in the wild, even if it's upright, there's wind. So it's going to dry out much faster than it would indoors. So you give it a good shake and you set it upside down on the towel. What you could do, you could also put a fan on if you wanted to, not necessary, but just put them on a towel and again, forget about them. Maybe do another chore. That's what I tend to do. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go start the laundry and then come back. And they've had basically some time, about an hour or so, for at least that excess water to drip out of it. And then I put it back in their respective places. So with these American varieties, they like bright indirect light. So really strong, like southern light, really strong western light could cause them to burn. And sometimes they're okay sometimes you can actually put them among other plants. I like to do that. Just do not set them on soil. So if you set them on soil, all that extra moisture will cause them to rot. So you don't want to do that. Now with the xeric variety, so these are like there's some really huge ones, the Tillandsia xerographica, which is this like really famous air plant. With those guys are actually from much more arid regions. So they're from like the mountainsides above the rainforests. So they get that extra humidity, but it's much more like hostile kind of environment. It's much drier, high winds. So they don't actually like to be dunked. So when you actually they don't want you to let them sit in water. That's the fastest way to actually cause them to rot. I learned this the hard way. So I am imparting onto you. I killed so many xerographicas until I was like learning more about them. And then I was like, oh gosh, I'm treating them just like I'm treating all my other air plants. And that's not the case. So with them, you can either do two things. You can either do a quick dunk and remove no more than a minute, or you can actually run them. You can take like your Tupperware, you can fill up like a bottle and do a little stream of water and kind of wet them that way. I think just the total dunk for about a minute is perfectly fine. And then they appreciate some spritzing, not so much that you're getting in the crevices, but just a little light spritzing. And that tends to be also about every 2 weeks or so, but it's much less water. So when you're actually looking at air plants, they have what it looks like a silvery fuzz. And what those are actually trichomes. And so think of it like the best way, and I did not come up with that, but someone had mentioned it, that it looks like when there's a castle with a moat and it has this drawbridge door. So it's like that. So this door is open, ready to receive that moisture. When it gets wet, so typically when the rain comes, then it basically locks back in. So when they're dry and they're out, it looks like this silver fuzz all over the plant. And then when it locks in, it's locking in that moisture. It looks much more green and lush. And it's because it's been thoroughly moisturized, basically. And plants that are like the xerographica, I'm trying to remember, there's another one that also it's like completely fuzzy. It looks like it's covered in hair. And those again it's much more trichomes. These are in arid environments, and they have even more areas to trap in water. But yeah, and those want brighter light situations. So those do want to be right up against the window, have a grow light. So yeah, if you get your air plants, there's a lot of myths. So there's a lot of folks that say, oh, you don't have to do anything. You can take the air plant, leave it on the table, and it's fine. And that it gets air from the air around it. But that's not how it works. That'll die. That will die eventually. If you are a chronic underwaterer, I would say you can get the varieties that they have what are called like pseudo bulbs. So they look like it's like a bulb, and then it has like the medusa, those types, because they actually tend to keep a little bit of extra water in that bulb area. so they can put up with you forgetting about them for 3 weeks or so. So if you're like, I want one, but I want one that's not as easy to kill, then probably getting like the Medusa caput, it's called, the Tillandsia Medusa caput. That would probably, I have a couple of those. And the ones I have of the most are the Ionanthas. And those are the typical air plants that you see, but I find them so beautiful. And it's really great when they do flower. Usually they start to blush. You might see the tips kind of change color. That tends to mean that a flower is incoming. And then once that is out and flowering, it will start. Usually the air plants are monocarpic, which means they will die after flowering. And so then you can have that, enjoy that flower if you like. And then what happens is that mother air plant will start to make pups at the base, and she will start the process of dying off and passing all those nutrients to the little pups. And and so sometimes you can get these pups. You can actually purchase them and they're adorable. But yeah, so it's cool when they start the life cycle again. I have some that I've had for over 4 years now that haven't flowered for me yet. I have had some that have flowered, but the oldest ones, they haven't flowered for me, but they keep producing pups. And so that's how you end up with dozens of air plants. Also, anytime I see any of those offers for like mixed air plants, I definitely grab that. But yeah, so they're pretty easygoing. It's something that you can have in a more laid back kind of setting, right? Because really, it's every 2 weeks that you really have to do a lot with them. And then otherwise you can forget about them. But yeah, I really like them. I like the different types. Every single one looks different. I highly recommend trying them out. Even get some cheap ones, and you can definitely find cheap ones. Get a cheap one, see how you like it, see if you can keep it alive for more than a few months, and you're like, okay, I'm ready to have more, and then go crazy. That's what I did.
Jocelyn, do they tend to grow slow if they're indoors?
Yeah. They don't grow typically really quickly. Even the xerographicas. So even the ones that we see, that these huge air plants, that air plant's probably 20 years old.
Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah, mine have grown. I can see the growth, but it's very slow. One has even flowered. Now the flowers have died off, but the plant's doing really well. I should take a picture. I only have 3 of them. I'll show you next week. I'll take pictures of them.
yes, please. No, absolutely.
Okay.
Pictures.
Yeah.
Air plants. I haven't successfully germinated the seeds, but that's definitely something I want to work on, because I had gotten a bunch of seeds. But the problem is that once those seeds, with the air plants, they have what are called dehiscent fruit. So they produce these little seed pods that open up, and then they basically let all the seeds go and get picked up by the wind. So I got a bunch of, it was the Tillandsia, I think recurvata, which is a ball moss. And it's called ball moss, but it's not a moss. And they were ready to pop, and I got the seeds. You're supposed to try to germinate them as quickly as possible. I did that. I set them up on sphagnum on a cork log. Didn't have any success, but that's supposed to be the best way. But yeah, so you can start them from seed, but it's going to take a lot of patience, because it takes years years for them to grow to the size.
Are any of yours mounted on bark or in moss? Or how do you have yours displayed?
Oh yeah, I have my air plants in different setups. So some of them I have in globes, in like these clear plastic globes, and I have those kind of more so in the kitchen. Are those in the bedroom? I have them basically amongst plants and on some driftwood. So I have some really beautiful driftwood, so I put them like that on display. And then in the living room, I just have them amongst the plants. So I have them, I think I have one globe in there. Yeah, I have one globe. And then the rest are all just up on the shelves and mixed in with my plants hanging off of my plants. So you can you don't have to display them a certain way. The only thing I would say is don't put an actual plant itself, like an actual air plant, on sphagnum moss that's wet, because that's going to cause rot. In my globes, some of them, there's nothing in them. And in others, I just have a little bit of leca. And so that's more so, I don't wet that. It's more so if there's any extra moisture on the air plant, it just kind of wicks it away.
Okay.
So I do it that way just to lower the possibility of rot. But yeah, but you can set them up in so many different ways. I have this really beautiful piece of driftwood that it's only about this tall, but it's placed on a little platform, and it has these little nooks and crannies, and I can just put them on there. So it's like a whole art piece. So
Now, how do you water that one?
yes, and I pull all of them off.
Oh,
That's what
okay.
I do is so they're not locked in. So I'm able to just take them all off, and I just I put them all in there, and then give them a good water, dry them off, and then I pluck them right back. So I switch it up every time. The only
Right.
ones I always keep in the same, and I don't mix them, are my oldest ones, only because I want to see how long I can keep them. And so when I water them separately in my kitchen so that I can track, because gosh, yeah, I've had them since the end of 2017. So they're heading towards 5 years. So I'm like, all right.
Wow, that's nice. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, sure. Holly, I can quickly show some examples of what I have. Let me. Where is, I think here. Google. Yeah. Sorry about the trucks. I keep hearing the trucks, but I'm gonna be going down. Here we go. Some Tillandsia. So I have Tillandsia. Antha is the one that I have the most of. So these are Ionanthas. So here are some different varieties. So they are the same species, but sometimes they just have slightly different genetic expression. Sometimes they're just bred to have more vibrant colors when they flower. You can see when they are going to flower, as I mentioned, they get this really pretty kind of blush, and then these flowers are absolutely gorgeous.
They are. Wow.
And so they're very different. So you can definitely check those out. And yeah, the issue is that a lot of folks say, oh, you can just spray them. But there's a couple issues with that. One, if you get too much excess water, so you see how it's sitting up like this, right? So if you're spraying it, all that excess water is falling inside. And then what ends up happening is that you have all that water sitting there. And let's say your home doesn't have very adequate air circulation, the windows closed, maybe the AC is on, so it's a little bit cooler. That's going to be prime time real estate for pathogens like bacteria and fungus to start to kind of rot that. It'll start to rot and they'll start to eat away at it, and you'll lose your plants. Another thing is that sometimes people just do choop choop and think that's enough water for the plant, but it isn't. So that's another thing that can end up, just spraying the plant can end up actually being an issue because it'll underwater your plant. And another issue I do want to mention, sometimes it isn't mentioned, which is when you have them in certain stands, like the one here, this is like a metal stand that's holding it up. Depending on the actual type of metal, for instance, from my understanding, copper can kill the air plant. It has a really bad reaction with the air plant. And then different types of metals, if you are spraying them repeatedly and they don't have some type of like rust protection, they will start to rust and corrode, and this will start to kill the air plant as well. So just be careful, and if you have them in these little metal stands, because that can end badly. The Medusa caput that I was, let's see, yeah, Medusa. So these are or is it Capusum? I think I inverted it. So it's caput Medusa. These have this kind of little bulb kind of shape, and they actually tend to they retain water much longer. So if you were to, again, you tend to forget to water your plants, you have a really busy schedule and you kind of want to experiment with air plants, this might be your best bet. And here's a great example where you can see when they're creating their pups. So the pups arise from the base of the plant. And so you can see with this Medusa, she's creating a pup right at the base there. And they do have roots. They're just not conventional roots. They're not really meant to take up moisture. These roots are they're more for holding on and gripping to the trees. So here you can see it's more to latch themselves, and rather than to actually use that for uptake of nutrients and things like that. Here's an example with flowers. Absolutely gorgeous.
Wow.
Sometimes you will see some air plants like here, if with certain species, when they produce pups, they like the ball moss. That's what it does. Like they're all connected at the base because there was the mother plant, and then she continues putting out, but they stay together and then they clump and they become a giant mass. And so this is actually why in many places, like in Florida, for instance, a lot of folks have the misunderstanding and think that these plants they consider them a pest species or a weed, and they think that they're harming the tree, for instance, because there are lots of things like witch's broom and mistletoe that kind of grows in that similar fashion in trees that is harmful. And folks see that the similarity in shape and think, oh gosh, this must be killing my tree. But it's actually just holding on to the tree. It's not harming the tree at all. It doesn't take any nutrients. It's not a parasite. The only issue is if you have a very old tree or a dead tree. If you have tillandsia, and these are like the bigger species, eventually after a big rainstorm, they're nice and wet and saturated. If you have a really old tree and they're on a branch that's just about to break, that can kind of cause that to happen. And so a lot of folks will remove them from those types of situations because they don't want that tree branch to fall and potentially harm anyone or their property, of course. But yeah, they're really great. I really recommend them. I have also the Xerographicas, just so that you see so those are the other ones I was showing you are the Merrick varieties. So these are like the rainforest kind of varieties. And then these are the ones that this is an example of one that lives much more in an arid kind of mountain kind of environment where there's much less greenery and it just gets drier, and it's more susceptible to heavy winds and to a lot more sun. And you can see just how silver they are. And again, it will take, this plant right here might be about 10 to 15 years old. Wow. So it does take a while. Whoops. Nope, thanks. I don't like gifts. So it will take them, to a while to get to that size. But here is another absolutely beautiful. These are really cool. They're really nice to have on display. But I went through quite a few of these. I think I killed 3 or 4 of them before I finally got it. Yeah, so you just have to be very mindful of the watering and how much, not overwater it, and then you're good to go. But let me see. Someone's playing in the pool. Some children playing in the pool. Let me see here. Mary Jo, I have a corn plant that is outgrowing my house. Can I cut off the top and put it in water and grow roots? And what is the real name for a corn plant? Yes. So the real name is a Dracaena, and I think it's a Dracaena massaneguia. It's something with it's like Massagenia. So they usually call them also the mass cane as well. Sometimes the corn plant's referring to also the Dracaena fragrans as well. Those, and so like I'll share my screen so that folks that might not know what species we're talking about. The corn plants, so corn plants, and then Dracaena fragrans. Yeah, Massagenia.
I can show what mine looks like.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, just so folks can see what we're talking about. Yes, it is a Dracaena. It has that look of corn, like the corn leaves, and so it's like a name stuck on it. Hold on, Mage. I'm going to spotlight you. There you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got to turn how do I turn the camera? Let me turn it this way. Does that help?
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Notice the stalk is very thin, and I don't know what to do about that. You think I could cut it about here?
Yeah, you can totally do that. You can cut it. I would recommend putting it aside away from direct sunlight, like the cutting, for a couple days because you want that scab to kind of form
Okay,
on the bottom. So it's usually maybe like 48 hours should be more than enough. And
but do I
then
put it directly in the water?
you can. So once it has that kind of scab, that callus,
Oh,
you can
okay.
then put it in water if you wanted to. You could also remove the bottom leaves and leave a nice space of just stem and stick
Okay.
it back in the pot.
Oh,
And then it would just root in the soil and it would just, yeah, you can totally do that as well. So if
Okay,
you would
thank
like
you.
to start it in water, you can totally do, but you can also just do that. That's probably the easiest way, is just to stick it back in the pot, but you would have to remove the bottom leaves because if you
Right.
put them in, when you put them in the soil, those leaves they'll start to rot. So you want to just remove those bottom ones.
Even with putting it in the water, you need to remove them, don't you? The bottom leaves?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Here we go. Holly, can you put some Epsom salts in the water so the plants can breathe more? Good question. I've seen Epsom salts being added to plants to help, I believe, with magnesium. It's not something I typically use with my plants. I don't know if it would. I would just be a little nervous to add it to my water. I'm not sure if it will. I've never used it that way to help oxygenate the soil a little bit more. I have heard people do that with hydrogen peroxide, but the problem with hydrogen peroxide is that it is corrosive to your roots. That can end up being an issue, is that it'll start to burn your roots after time. Let me see here.
I wanted to
Oh
ask
yeah.
questions, Jason.
Oh.
Tanya?
Oh, hello. Hold on one second. Let me put where to go. Let's see. Haha, there we go.
Hi. I think there was like almost the reverse question asked earlier. I got a really nice deal in the fall on a like 3-foot high monstera that I immediately root rotted. And so I decided to do a propagation experiment. And I did Leica. I put some in water. I put some in directly in the dirt, and some I did in perlite. And so 2 of them did really well that survived. There was another incident, but two of them survived, right? So from 2 leaves, I've got 2 little plants. So I was wondering if I should, because I've been keeping it in this big, I've got a plant stand in this pot, and it looks like it's one. Is it better to keep them apart, or would it be better to put them in a pot together? That's one of my questions. And my other question is, when I did this propagation, because this was a full-grown plant with lots of fenestrations and giant leaves originally, like the first leaf to come in has fenestrations. This little one little fenestration. This is the first one to come through, and it's the only fenestration to come through. So I'm wondering if there's any way I can get it to do this, or I just have to wait. So those are my questions about the fenestration. And is it better to combine them or just
Or leave them as is.
or leave them separately? Yeah.
Okay. You can combine them, but it would be more so if it's more aesthetically pleasing to you. So some folks want a bushier plant. So if that is your aim in the long run, you do want like a larger plant, you can totally combine them. They should be perfectly fine. That shouldn't be an issue, but you don't have to. It'll be perfectly fine if they're growing on their own. It's more in terms of your kind of aesthetic. If you want a really large bushy plant, you want to keep it more compact. So that one is your call in terms of the actual fenestrations. And so what happens is that when we start cuttings and we have these gorgeous, huge leaves, what happens is that, especially depending on how much like stem tissue there is, how much there is to work with, what happens is it takes a lot of energy to make new leaves. And so what will happen is you'll have a big, beautiful fenestrated leaf with holes and everything. And then what ends up happening is now the new leaves start reverting to their immature form, these little heart leaf ones. But that's completely normal. It happens like people that buy giant Hawaiian pothos. I've had clients that are like, oh, I just bought this and it's only giving me little leaves, and that's completely normal. It takes a lot of energy. So it's usually once the plant is really nicely established, so the root system is great, it's getting a really nice amount of light that it likes, that's when you start to see, okay, so now it feels it can funnel that energy into larger leaves. So
Gotcha.
then you will start getting these bigger leaves coming out with those desired fenestrations. You don't have to wait typically years or anything like that. If you were starting it for those that don't know, if you are starting it, let's say from a seed, or you got like a seedling, it is going to take 4 to 5 years before you probably get one fenestrated leaf, because they don't start till they're mature. But when you start with a mature plant, it does revert back to that immature leaf shape. And then it starts to, once it's nice and established and it has that extra energy, then that's when you're going to start to see those fenestrations come back into the leaves again.
Okay. All right. I saw a comment there. This is like an orchid pot. This has holes, and this is a nursery pot. So this is what they're in, and I water them in. This is just decoration.
No,
There's-
that's wonderful. I love that you did the experiment too. You had one, you said in
Yeah.
leca, in soil, you had one in perlite. Like,
I'm
that's
surprised
awesome.
the leca was the fastest, and the soil did really well too. Those are the two fastest. The perlites, most of them died, but I did different kinds of ways with perlite, just a little bit of perlite and a lot of perlite. Yeah, they all died. But thank you. I thought I was gonna have leaves this summer, but maybe next summer.
Yeah, no, yeah. And it's still the growing season. Maybe it'll surprise you.
Jocelyn, what actually is lectha?
Yes. So leca are lightweight expanded clay aggregates.
Oh, it's
And
it's
so,
a
There are
abbreviation.
those little clay balls. I'll show an image here so that folks so it's this.
Oh.
So basically it's mined, I believe. It's like I'm trying to remember again. I think it's like this clay that is then heated, and basically it pops like popcorn, and it creates these little kind of bubbles, and then it's very porous. So what's great about this, it feels like it has like terracotta like that. And so what happens is that it wicks water away from the plants itself. It also, if you, let's say, have a big like pot, and you put a dish of water, it will literally go up. It travels up. It's very good at that capillary action of pulling that water up, but it keeps plants from really helps with rotting, the issue with them rotting because they're holding on to too much water. And another great thing about them is it gives also plants like a surface to adhere to. So when you're propagating, I propagate with leca because basically the roots that come in. So again, wound roots are the first roots that are gonna come in. And that is like a motorcycle. But the first roots that come in are very thin. They're called the wound roots. And then depending on what you have it in, so if you have it in just water, you tend to get these really thin, delicate water roots. If you have leca though, you get some of those water roots, but then you start to get those really girthy, those really nice looking roots that are covered in root hairs, and they look really fuzzy. And then they are actually attaching themselves to the leca. And what I find is when I start my plants, my propagations in leca, then they are much more successful when I transfer them into a soil mix. Sometimes with some of my transitions, what I do is I have them in leca, and then I will have the plant, I'll have leca, and then what I'll do is I'll remove some of the leca on the top, put a little bit of sphagnum. And so now they dry out a little faster because sphagnum won't hold on to that water so long. So it starts to give them periods of drought, and then hardens off the roots a little bit. And then I will then put it into a soil mixture after I start to really get even more roots that way. It starts to promote aerial root growth and stuff for aeroids. So I like to do that. I also sometimes do what is like the sandwich, where after my propagations are starting to get roots in leca, then I put them in a pot that has the soil mix that I want on the bottom. And then I put a thin layer of leca. And then I put a little bit of sphagnum. It's like a lasagna, I think, more than a sandwich. I do that. And then I put the plant, so it's being held in with the leca, has a little bit of that sphagnum at the base. But then when it's pushing out more roots, it actually goes into the dirt. And so then it gets really established that way. So it just establishes itself. So there isn't such ripping and let me put it into something else, rip it out. Let me put it into something else, which can sometimes cause the plant a lot of stress, and it kind of has to restart, goes back to the beginning of the race essentially. But yeah, these are great. I highly recommend. They're much cheaper now. They were very expensive when they first really started to get popular, but now there's so many places, like stores even have their own brands, so it's getting much more popular.
Can you plant an orchid in leca?
I'm sorry?
Can you plant an orchid in leca?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just-
Absolutely.
just
I have
set
some
it
of
in
my Phalaenopsis in leca. Again, it's really great. I have those, you put them in orchid pots. And so what's great is you can just put them into another like a plastic container when I bottom water them. And so it uptakes that water. I can give it a good shake and then that's fine. It has more than enough water. The leca dries, it leaves all that space for air circulation. It dries really quickly. So it's not just sitting in that water for a really long time.
How about as a pot filler, Jocelyn? Can you use it as a bottom pot filler, like stones or bark?
If some folks really like to use like that bottom base with like stones and things like that. If you really have had success with that in the past and you want to do it, leca's not a bad way to go because it's very porous. The problem is when you use stones that don't have any holes, they're like solid stone. What ends up happening is that you create what is called a perched water table. So essentially the water gets caught in that upper layer, and so it doesn't exit the pot. But with leca though, it is because it wicks water and it's very porous. I think that would really help in that situation.
Okay.
I like to add it to my mixes. So when I make my aeroid mix, for instance, I have orchid bark in there, cocoa coir. Sometimes I add lava rock or I just add leca or both, whichever, with perlite, and then some like worm castings. And sometimes I add some type of soil base, like a succulent soil, which I use for a lot of my aeroids. But it's like a very small percentage of everything else. So if you're looking for more chunk, basically, like things like orchid bark and leca is great. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Great.
you're welcome. Let me see. Where did here's the chat. Terry, I have and thank you, Terry, for the books, by the way. I meant to text you. So Terry sent over some wonderful books. Thank you so much. I literally got them on Friday night and I was packing because we were leaving Saturday. So sorry, I meant to text you back, but thank you so much. They were plant books. Very happy. I'm excited to check them out. So thank you so much. So she asks, I have a little peperomia, the Napoli Nights, and I believe it has fungus. There are black spots on the underside of the leaves. I've removed several leaves, but almost all the leaves and some stems have these black spots. I've applied some isopropyl alcohol, but what should I do next? Okay, good question. Peperomia, they are pretty prone to fungus, more because they tend to get potted up in very moisture retaining mixes. And so what ends up happening is that's, again, very attractive to fungal spores, and then that will then attack the leaves. If you believe it is a fungus, then one thing, alcohol won't help too much with fungus. It's very good with pests, so like insects, mites, things like that. But with fungus, there are a couple things. So there are copper-based fungicides. There are sulfur-based fungicides. There's some that are both copper and sulfur-based. The problem is that it can cause damage to the plant in the long run. Another like home remedy that tends to work a lot, and if you're willing to experiment, is with baking soda. So getting baking soda and using like a paintbrush to essentially paint the leaves, the affected leaves, the top sides and the undersides with just baking soda. And yeah, it tends to help because it basically regulates like that pH, and it might stop that the fungus at least from expanding a lot more. But yeah, so hopefully that might help if in terms of what you can use. If it is though also affected with the fungus, I would say to try to move it into a space that has slightly more a brighter light situation, and make sure it's somewhere that there's a lot of air circulation. So if maybe there's a fan nearby, maybe an open window, something where you're giving it much more crosswinds, right? So there's much more air moving around, because the stagnant air, also darker, if it's in a darker spot, that's just gonna be a better situation for the fungus. So Synth, can you write all this? Oh, about the LECA. Oh, it was too much to get down. Yeah, of course, the replay will be up, but yeah, I can totally, what I'll do, I was going to do a class on hacks for houseplant tools next week, but what I'll do is I'll mention that. Because there are some things there. I'll make sure to mention that. So then it'll have all that dedicated. And yeah, I can write something up. So I'll write up like a blog post. Yeah, and I'll send it out. So in case anybody would be interested, and I'll take some photos of my own plants as well. So yeah, I can totally do that. And Holly, good question. Is LECA good for ferns? Okay. The issue with LECA with ferns is that most ferns, they like wet heat, right? They like moisture rich environments. And LECA is very good at its job, and it wicks that water away. And then as soon as like the plant itself starts drying, it releases any more water. But the issue with that is that it might dry too quickly. So certain plants like ferns, young trees, for instance, like the little lemon cypress, right? Those little trees, they do not do well in terracotta. It just dries way too quickly. So with the ferns, more than likely something like a maidenhair fern, a rabbit foot fern, it might still dry way too quickly for them. So it might not be the best situation, unless it's a fern that you've maybe kept in water the entire time. Then maybe LECA, if you wanted to add LECA in there for the roots to grab onto, because you can do that too. So even in our fish tanks, my husband and I have aquariums, and we use LECA as the substrate at the bottom. And we have some plants that are cuttings that are in like glass tubes, that there are no holes. There's no way for the water to escape. And we have LECA in there, and those water roots do go and attach to the LECA as well. So you can, yeah, you can add them if you have that type of situation going as well. You can totally have that as a substrate. But if you just wanted to set it up like an orchid pot kind of situation where there's a lot of holes in the container, you have your plant in LECA, I wouldn't recommend it for ferns. I just think they would dry out way, way too quickly. George, is the copper-based fungicide toxic to Tillandsia? I would assume so. So from my understanding, it's copper. It's because there's a specific metal that's really toxic to Tillandsia, and I believe it's copper. Yeah, it would probably harm them. With typically, you don't really see them affected very much by fungus. It's more so they start to rot because they've been overwatered. And then of course, bacteria and fungus just make their way to eat the spoils essentially. But yeah, I think the only pests I've really seen a lot of folks have issues with Tillandsia are like they're called like bromeliad weevils. So it's something that you can see a lot in areas like Florida. I know that it's very prevalent there. It's like a bromeliad weevil. And also there are these little, oh my gosh, what are they called? Not no-see-ums, but in Spanish moss. So Spanish moss, if anyone's familiar with, that's actually Tillandsia. It's Tillandsia Usneonoides, something like that. And that is also, it has these little mites that sometimes people collect it and then sell that to people. And so you end up bringing that into your house and you start to get bit up. So yeah, lightweight expanded clay aggregate. Yes, Doug. Yes, that is the leca. Yep. And Holly, so leca is more useful for succulents and plants that only need water once or twice a month. It's not necessarily that it's more useful, but it can be. With the succulents, I add it to their mix, but I don't have them just in leca. There are some cuttings that I do. So I do start a lot of my leaf propagations for like jade plants, for instance. Those I actually start from on leca, and I have them growing that way. And then they hold on to the leca, and they're growing into little jade plants. I have little echeverias. They're all growing on leca. And what I did is I put a little dish, it's a little saucer, and then I put the leca, I put the little leaf propagations of the succulents. I add a little bit of water, so it's still below it's not covering the leca, the water is still under, so it wicks the water up. And then it's a way to keep them from rotting, because I was not having any luck with setting jade plants or the leaves for echeverias. You see all these people putting them on soil, right? And it's like these perfect little circles of leaves on soil, and I would try that and they would rot. I would lose all of them. When I switched, I said, let me try this on leca, and it worked. And now there was no turning back. so I do it that way. And would leca be good for prayer plants, but not lilies, that big plant? I have seen a peace lily in leca, but in a vase, so the water could not escape. It was more of a substrate for the roots to grab onto, but the actual thing was full of water 24/7. So that would be fine. With prayer plants, I have started prayer plant cuttings in water with leca successfully. Prayer plants are not epiphytic. I would say the biggest species I think that would do really well with either in leca or in a really heavy, like leca, like a heavy amount of leca in the substrate would be something that's an epiphyte. So something that typically lives in trees, or sometimes they live in rocks, like lithophytes that grow up like in rocky crevices. So plants that don't want to be sitting in mud, right? They don't typically grow in soil. Those seem to do really well. I have some dragon fruit that's growing exclusively in leca. I actually have a Dracaena that I have that is growing. It's the Sansevieria cylindrica. It's like it was like a spear, and I have that one growing just in leca. I have some Hoyas that are in leca. Yeah, so it's a lot of epiphytes do really well. So plants that typically grow like in trees and things like that, because they want that aeration, right? They don't want to be sitting in soil, because that's not how they typically grow. So they definitely do much better. And great, let me see. Okay, so I think I got dragon fruit. Yes, George, yes. Yeah, dragon fruit. Mine hasn't rooted. I have quite a few dragon fruit plants. I have different varieties. And I have one that's supposed to give more of it's called like something like purple haze or something like that. But I have that one. I have another one that's like a pink, called like petal pink, something like that. So there's a lot of different varieties, and like the shape of the cactus is different. And I have one dragon fruit that's taking over my bedroom. It's in a pot like this, and it's just like an octopus. I'm constantly running into it, and I need to figure out, I don't want to cut it, but I don't know how much longer I can deal with it that way, because the new growth gets those little needles. And so I'm constantly getting pricked, but they're beautiful. And that's been going crazy. I haven't had any fruit for me. I don't know if it would be much better if I were to move it outside, but I would only be able to have it outside in the summer months. But yeah, they're doing really well. The big truck just passed by. Let me see. Oh, moss with air plants attached to the moss itself. With air plants, yeah, they will attach themselves to the trees, and there might be moss and lichens, things like that growing on the trees. But it's fine when it's growing out in the wild because again, there's that extra in that in that extra aeration. So it's perfectly fine. But if when in your home and putting it on moss, it's just not going to dry as quickly and it's just going to be like sitting on a wet sponge. So it's going to end up killing it in the long run. With someone's asking about the Christmas cactus. Linda Bruce, any hints about propagating a Christmas cactus? Yes. Super easy to propagate Christmas cactus. I would say, so those little stem segments, they're known as phyloclades. You want to at least have two, at the very least, but I would recommend a bigger piece because usually the first piece at the base tends to, it might get a little bit shriveled. It'll start to put roots out and then the tip tends to get really dehydrated. So you might lose one of those segments. The bigger the piece, the better. And sometimes I really recommend when you have a really large Christmas cactus, they do start to put off their own offsets. And so a lot of these will touch the ground and then root themselves. Those are much more successful because they've already started the process. So you kind of cheat. So you're not starting from a fresh cutting. If you are starting that, I've found that just putting it into a substrate that has like a lot of perlite, not something that is straight like peat or just straight soil, it might start to rot. So something with a lot of chunk to it will be great for propagating because it'll get nice and established that way. Betty, I'm growing my first dragon fruit plant outdoors on a piece of lattice. I just fertilized it. That is awesome. Yes, they will grow. As you saw in that photo, they will grow in trees. They will grow up. You give them something to climb and they will grow. Mine, I will try to shoot video when I get back so I can show you guys next week. But it's so massive and it's shooting out these aerial roots that what's actually happening is that it's attaching itself. It's trying to attach itself to my bookshelf. And it's these huge roots. So if you give it something to climb, it's gonna take off. Oh, phyloclades, and so that is spelled PHYLLOCLADES. So phyloclades. I will put that in the chat. So phyloclades are basically what a lot of succulents have, which they're not true leaves. We call them leaves, like when you look at a jade, right? We call them leaves, but they're actually phyloclades, and they actually are basically flattened stems that can photosynthesize. So a lot of these plants that look like they have like they're made up of chains, those are actually like phyloclades, like Rhipsalis, Christmas cactus, all the holiday cacti, the Thanksgiving cacti, and the Easter cacti. Yeah. Is your dragon fruit fast growing indoors? Yes, I have it in a southeastern window and it's been really fast. So what I actually made it faster was moving it closer to the window. So I was nervous about burning them. So I had them by my southeastern window, but they were pulled back about 3 feet. And I had 2 cuttings specifically that I have had for about 2 years that are rooted great, but weren't giving me any extra growth. So they didn't have any like arms. They were not moving. They were doing well, but that was it. And then I actually moved them in the spring to the window and now they sprouted arms and they're growing at a ridiculous rate. One of them already has it shot up and now it's above my curtain rod. So it's poking out like the other side of my curtain rod. And then the larger one, it's been pushing out growth like no tomorrow. It's growing super, super fast. I just don't know if it would ever potentially like fruit for me. I have no idea. I personally haven't looked into it too much, but I know I've never seen anyone with a dragon fruit, like fruits being produced indoors. So I don't know. I would love that. I would absolutely love that. But so far, I'm not sure. All right. So I'm going to, the last few minutes, I'm going to try to join here with my, let me see here, with my phone, and then I'm going to bring you down. I want to show you some plants. Let me turn off my Bluetooth on my computer so that it'll attach to my headphones.
So this is an experiment. We'll see. Oh, thank you, Deanna. I'm so glad. I was so scared that my Wi-Fi connection wasn't going to be good. And I was happy that
Yeah,
it.
perfect. Great.
Thank you so much for tuning in.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Tanya, since they love neglect, would fertilizing a snake plant be a bad idea? Not necessarily a bad idea, but they're just not very hungry, as things like Monstera, for instance. They really like that being fertilized. Although you shouldn't fertilize your plants more than once a month during the growing season, unless it's super weak strength. So if it's like super diluted, you can get away with doing it more than that. But yeah, I'm gonna test out to see if I hear anything in here. I do. Okay, so it's connected. But yeah, so you can give them a little bit. I give mine the slow release pellets. I think it's Job's slow release pellets. And I added like literally a pinch, and that's all I do. But all my plants also get aquarium water. And so it's like it's fertilized, but it's not heavy duty, so it's not burning my plants, and I use that year round. So that's another way you can. So if it's like a super diluted fertilizer, it's fine to use more than like that once a month. But if you're trying to buy those commercial fertilizers and you're going like by the dosage and stuff, sometimes it's way too strong to use more than that. But if your snake plant is, for instance, starting to push out tons of new growth, right? It's the growing season, it's in a sunny window, it's like going off, and you want to add a little bit, you can just, again, even if it says dilute it 4 times, dilute it 6 times. Always just dilute it a little bit more than what it says on the bottle, just to be safe. You're welcome. Brenda, just stopping by to grow more roots. Of seeing, hearing, learning the tips of houseplant caring. We'll do the replay. Of course. Yes. Thanks, Brenda. Thanks so much. Thank you for tuning in. And now let me join the session. And so then I should be able to take you with me to, here we go. Let's see. I should be able to join in. And then I'll add I'll switch myself here. Okay. So reclaim host.
All right, perfect. All right, so that I don't, folks can if there's folks that might have to hop off. Yes, don't worry, Synth. I'm glad you were able to join. And yeah, so it's recording, so we'll be good to go. All right, let's see here. So hi, so Brian, my husband Brian. All right, so huge place here. Hold on. Maybe not fall down the stairs. And so I'm going to lead you over here. Let's see here. I think that way. All right, cool. So here, I'm gonna switch my camera. Gabby, yes, I am in El Salvador. Let me switch out. Haha, there we go. Here we go. We got the pool. So I wanted to show you this cordyline. Huge, absolutely huge. Towers over me. Absolutely beautiful, really beautiful pink new foliage coming in. These are actually found in, I believe, Southeast Asia, Australia. You might recognize them from your local plant shop. This really gorgeous pink going on. There's some butterflies here. Let's see. There is also this huge well, there's several. There are huge protons. So if you've never seen so there's some tiny ones, which we're used to seeing them. And this, as you can see, these are also actually from Asia. They're not native to the area. Let's see. So different fruit trees. Let me see here. There's quite a few that I am not familiar with. So I've been asking everyone, what do you call this? And and what is that? Here we go. So it looks like something ate, looks like a mango. Something ate this fruit that was not there yesterday. But here we have this giant aloe. And you can see here it has a pup. So this is how they will propagate themselves and make even more aloes. And I think there's even more than one pup here. Yeah, there's another one back there that's just starting off. Let's see, many more here. Let's see. But this is what I really, really want to show you that I got super excited about for the Kalanchoes. So look at these things. This is the Kalanchoe. Again, it's like a Frederickinois, something like that. Variegata, beautiful scalloped edge that is getting pink because of the sun. But then this is how it propagates. So this somehow, I guess, broke off one of these. Oh, here you can actually see it. So they grow their pups actually on these leaves, and here you could see the roots. And so this will literally do this. It'll fall here, and these will root. This mother leaf will die off. It will just get shriveled up and disappear, or just break apart. And yeah, and then the little ones will start. There's actually some here that look like, I'm gonna move them over here. There's some that look completely white. But yeah. So oh, this one too. Just make sure if I'm grabbing one, it's not fair. I'll grab them all. Here we go. All right. And yeah, they find some, fall on some substrate and they get started. But this one, look at this. It's huge. And so these are called donkey ears. And so these are both Kalanchoes, also known as Kalanchoes. And then here they actually call them, yes, George, yes, they are genetically identical. They are clones of the mother plant. Oh, this one looks like it's about to drop here. But here, what's really interesting, here's a pup. Yes, there's mother of millions and mother of thousands. This is a Kalanchoes. They will make their pups on the edges like that. Let's say Kalanchoe. And what's really cool is that here in El Salvador, there's actually a whole organization that has been working with these because they actually grow 5 different species in this community garden here in El Salvador, where they are growing these different species of Kalanchoes because they use them to apparently help folks that are dealing with cancer. And so they use them medicinally. They cut them up and put them in salads, or they also will basically take the leaves of the plants and juice them and kind of make them into smoothies. I have not read any studies on this. I just learned this last night. So I'm definitely going to look more into that. I have never heard of them being used medicinally, so as far as I can recall. So that's really cool. But It is a common also ornamental plant here. It is not native to the area. They actually there are over 100 species of kalanchoes, and I know these I think are from Madagascar. These are actually specifically bred, so they don't necessarily have an origin. This was kind of something that was selectively bred for the shape and color. So yeah, so it doesn't, but just wanted to share that. It's so cool, and I had never heard of that. And it apparently they set up the community garden specifically in an area that has a very high prevalence for cancer, and that's what they've been really using kind of as an experimental therapy. And I just thought that was so cool. And it's just a house plant on quotes, right? Air quotes. And look at just these aloes here. Well, there's an agave here. You can see it has had some damage. You can actually see the fibers that are actually within these leaves. But this is the agave. It looks like it's coming out with a new leaf, but it looks like it did get damaged. This might be in a bad spot because the gate. Yeah, we have a bunch of aloes again with pups. There's a whole line of aloes here. But yeah, there's just it's absolutely gorgeous here. It's my first time in El Salvador. I've never been here before. My mother is from Costa Rica, so I have been in Central America before. I haven't. Yes, are those planter tires? Yes, and they have quite a few like this that are just in tires, which is so neat. It's such a cool idea. I've seen that used. I've seen my mom has in front of her home. She has these, but they're painted. So tires just make great planters. There's some ants. I've been seeing a lot of leaf cutter ants so far. And let me try. I'm gonna try going up these stairs. I have not tried these stairs yet, so this is new for me. That looks like what they call, what is it? Oh my gosh. Joseph's Cradle, I think. I'm trying to remember, like it's in the spiderwort family, like related to Tradescantias. Kind of looks like that. Yeah, there's that other croton back there. There looks like here, these look like they're crotons that are not happy. So these are crotons. These have much finer leaves than the other ones we were looking at. They have much broader leaves, but these seem to not really be liking this spot specifically. There is a Dieffenbachia. Here we go. Kind of hidden among here. And let's see. Let me open up the chat again so I can see what is. Here we go. Do the tires contain toxic chemicals or materials? Well, I'm not sure how good they are in terms of if they tend to leach very much. I've never looked into that. I would assume there is some, but probably I've seen so many successful plantings and tires, so it looks like that it must be not too bad. Yeah, I'm not sure about the leaching effects. There are coconut palms. Yes, there's quite a few palm species. Some of them do have coconuts. So I myself am allergic to coconuts, but it's cool to see the trees up close. And let me see here. And I just wanted to show you these two. So we have some more kalanchoes, but then here, so this is what they call Cuban oregano. Smells so good. And yeah, so this one is in the mint family, if I'm not mistaken. No, I'm sorry, not in the mint family. It's a Plectranthus. And so here, and then behind here, it looks like we have an Apischia. I think this is an Apischia. Absolutely beautiful, very fuzzy. So these are very, very soft, very soft leaves, like really like a African violet. And these kind of grow in a very similar way. Looks like they're spreading along there. Here is looks like this is another type of aloe, probably like a tiger aloe, or what they call like a salmon aloe. Has its little teeth here. I'm not sure what this plant is here. This looks pretty neat, but I am not familiar with that. Let's see. Oh, and here's here again, some more of these aloes, and then a little baby croton. And then some more of this, what they call Cuban oregano. It can get a woody stem over time. I've seen some really beautiful ones. I have some of this at home. I have like a lime green color and a dark green color. I want to get the variegated one because I want to have all of those. Let's see, what else do we have here? Again, this really looks like it's in the spiderwort family. Oh, look at that. We got some syngonium. Look at that. So we have a syngonium growing in the wild. Absolutely beautiful. And again, I really think this is something like what they call it. Was it Joseph's cradle? I really can't recall the common name here, but I think it's a member of the spiderwort family related to things like Tradescantia. And yeah, and then there's this kind of looks like Pelia, I think Microcantha, but I'm really not sure. Kind of looks like what they call like artillery plants, artillery ferns. But they're so tiny, so it's really it's difficult to tell, but it's growing all along here. Yeah, so it was just a little a little tour of here of this garden that we have here. I'm gonna try to find out these species that I don't know. I'm gonna try to get those identified, so I can then shoot a follow-up video to share with everyone with all the names. But yeah, so thanks. Thanks so much for tuning in. And oh, I will show you one last one because I'm seeing more Dieffenbachia over here. Let me turn my camera around. Here's more. I love the way that the leaves come in, the Dieffenbachias. But yeah, you can see some more here. So yeah, I'm gonna keep shooting videos and pictures and stuff. And there's huge dragonflies right now, orange dragonflies behind me. Yeah, so I appreciate you tuning in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday, the rest of your week. I'm so glad that I was able to share this with everyone. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm gonna try to get when I do the replay, what I'll do is I will try to like paste in the names of the plants so that you can have the names and get them identified. But I hope that this was fun, and enjoy the rest of your week. I'm gonna try to make the most of my time here, and yeah, and I'll try to get more footage for everyone. Bye everyone, and thanks so much. Truly appreciate it. Thank you. Let's see. Woo. Okay,